What starts as fun with friends can turn into something you'll never forget or escape from. Story 1. The fortress was our entire world, a small universe made of dining chairs and floral bedsheets. Inside, cocooned by the flickering glow of fairy lights, it was just me, Liam, and Chloe. The air smelled of buttered popcorn and the cheap chocolate we'd smuggled from the pantry. It was my 11th birthday sleepover, a sacred ritual of childhood. "My cousin told me this one," Liam whispered, his voice hushed with a performer's gravity. "It's about the tapper." Chloe groaned, pulling her sleeping bag tighter. "Not another one." "No, this one's real," he insisted. "They say if you're alone in a house at night, you'll sometimes hear a tapping on your window. 3 slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. If you look, you'll see nothing. But he knows you heard him. Then he'll go to your door. If you open it, even a crack." Liam paused, letting the silence hang. "He takes your voice." We scoffed with the kind of bravado only children possess. It was a dumb story. We knew it, but we loved the shiver it sent down our spines. An hour later, after a failed attempt at watching a horror movie we were too scared to finish, we settled down to sleep. The house was quiet, save for the low hum of the refrigerator. That's when I heard it. Tap. 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 It came from the large living room window, a sound so faint I thought I'd imagined it. I froze, my eyes wide in the dim light. Liam was already sitting bolt upright, his face a pale mask. "Did you?" he started. Tap. 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 Louder this time. Sharper. It wasn't a branch. It was deliberate, like a fingernail on glass. Chloe let out a choked sob, burying her face in her pillow. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. The cozy fort suddenly felt like a flimsy cage. "Don't look," I hissed, the words catching in my throat. We huddled together, a trembling mass of fear, straining our ears in the crushing silence that followed. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Maybe it was over. Maybe it was just a prank. Then we heard a new sound, a soft metallic scratching from the front door. It was followed by a single resonant tap on the solid wood. My blood ran cold. He had moved. The silly ghost story, our fun little game, was bleeding into reality. A second tap echoed through the house, closer, more demanding. We were paralyzed, tears streaming down my face as I stared at the thin sheet that served as our door. We held our breath, waiting for the third. Instead, we heard the slow, deliberate jiggle of the doorknob, and then the soft click of the lock giving way. Story 2. The scent of burnt popcorn and Maya's mom's floral air freshener was the official perfume of our 7th grade sleepovers. We were huddled in a sleeping bag fort in her basement, the glow of a laptop screen painting our faces in shifting blues and oranges as we watched some terrible slasher movie. It was me, Maya, and our friend Chloe. The movie ended, and a comfortable silence fell, broken only by the hum of the old freezer in the corner. "My cousin told me a story about this house," Chloe whispered, her voice mischievous in the dark. "She said a man used to live here, and he'd listen to people through the walls. He'd scratch, just a little, to let them know he was there." Maya rolled her eyes. "My parents would have told me if we bought a murder house, Chloe." We laughed, the tension breaking. We turned out the laptop, plunging the basement into near-total darkness, and wriggled into our sleeping bags. The familiar whispers and giggles of a sleepover filled the air until, one by one, we drifted off. I woke up to a sound. Scrape. 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 It was faint, like a mouse scrabbling behind the drywall. I held my breath, listening. It stopped. It was probably just the old house settling, I told myself, my heart thumping against my ribs. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to force myself back to sleep. Scrape. Scrape. Drag. This time it was louder, more deliberate. It wasn't the frantic sound of an animal. It was slow, rhythmic. It was coming from the wall right behind my head. I froze, every muscle in my body screaming. I could hear Chloe's breathing quicken beside me. She was awake too. I risked a glance at Maya's sleeping bag. A tiny sliver of moonlight from the high basement window showed she was sitting bolt upright, her eyes wide with terror. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse, thick and suffocating. We lay there for what felt like an eternity, 3 statues carved from fear. Then, a whisper slithered through the wall, a dry, rasping sound that was barely human. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, and it was right next to my ear. It said my name. We didn't scream. The sound was too primal for that. It was a simultaneous, silent explosion of pure panic. We scrambled out of our sleeping bags, tripping over each other in the dark as we clawed our way up the basement stairs. We burst into the kitchen, gasping and sobbing, waking Maya's parents. They didn't believe us, of course. A bad dream, an overactive imagination fueled by horror movies. But we never had a sleepover in that basement again. I never stayed at Maya's past sundown. And sometimes, even now, when I'm alone in a quiet room, I hear a faint scratching, and I wait, with my breath caught in my throat, to hear my name. Story 3. The only light in my parents' basement came from a string of fairy lights and the glow of our phones. Pizza boxes lay open and discarded, a tombstone to our midnight feast. It was my 13th birthday sleepover. Just me, Chloe, and Maya, cocooned in a nest of sleeping bags and blankets. "Okay, my turn," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Did you guys ever hear about the shadow in the corner?" Maya groaned, pulling her sleeping bag tighter. "Is this another one of your made-up stories?" "It's not made up," Chloe insisted, her eyes wide and earnest in the dim light. "They say if you stare into the darkest corner of a room for long enough, without blinking, you'll see it. A figure, darker than the dark. And if it sees you looking, it'll start to move." We all laughed, a nervous, brittle sound that didn't quite fill the basement's silence. My basement was unfinished, with a concrete floor and one particularly deep, shadowed corner behind an old water heater. Naturally, all our eyes drifted there. It was a perfect, gaping maw of blackness. "That's so dumb," I said, but my heart was starting to thump a little faster. "Prove it," Chloe challenged, a glint in her eye. "Let's all do it. Stare at that corner. First one to look away is a rotten egg." The game was stupid, childish, but the atmosphere was charged, and none of us wanted to be the first to back down. So we did it. We propped ourselves up on our elbows and fixed our gazes on the abyss behind the water heater. Seconds stretched into a minute. My eyes burned, threatening to water. The darkness seemed to pulse, to shift. It was just a trick of the light, my brain trying to create patterns where there were none. I told myself that over and over. Then I heard it. A soft, wet sniffle. It wasn't Chloe or Maya. I risked a glance. They were both still staring, their faces pale and rigid. The sound came again, closer this time. It was the sound of someone crying, but muffled and thick. My blood ran cold. I wanted to scream, to turn on the main lights, but I was paralyzed. The fairy lights flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging us into absolute blackness. Maya let out a choked sob. "Chloe, stop it!" "It's not me," Chloe whispered back, her voice trembling. A floorboard creaked above us, then another, moving slowly, deliberately, toward the basement stairs. But my parents were out of town. We were supposed to be alone. The crying sound was in the room with us now. It was a deep, guttural sob of despair, and it was coming from the corner. A faint, foul smell, like damp soil and decay, filled the air. Something scraped against the concrete floor, a slow, dragging sound. It was moving toward us. We were trapped in the dark with the story Chloe had told. Except it wasn't a story anymore.